Yes, bring in new voices. Yes, do it, go for it. But if it doesn't work with the first diverse voice, the not non-whites, I'm talking about non-whites now, that doesn't mean it's a failure. Keep going, keep working on it. These are systemic problems that have been in place almost since the beginning of audio. And so it's going to take time to what I call undo the bias.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jody Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Here's the second part of my interview with LaTonya J. Pegues. So in the aspect of helping people overcome this, how do you specifically, when you're doing this as a trainer, how do you help people overcome this kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. Listen to new voices. That's a big one. Take note and listen to common themes from different speakers. Don't be afraid of a different point of view. That's a big one. Just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you if I don't agree with you. Let's see, what can you do to overcome unconscious bias? You can be aware that you got it.
That's a biggie.
Yeah.
That's the first step.
Right.
The first step is knowing you have a problem.
There you go.
Yep.
Take note of how you react and respond to different people. That's a big one. If you have favorites and it's obvious to others, that could be a problem because it's going to affect the team. It's not going to be great for the team. Let's see. Identify with what makes you uncomfortable. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? We're still talking black and white. Some white men have a problem with black men. And for whatever reason, I'm like, what is the problem? Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, inside, they have this fear of black men. So when there's an opportunity to tackle them or to shoot them, or here in the United States, we have a lot of problems with just Black people literally just walking down the street and getting murdered by cops because somebody called, a white woman in her house called and said, there's a black man on my street. Well, here in the U.S., it's public. They're public streets funded by taxpayers. Everybody's taxpayers' money is commingled. And so it's black money and white money. But yet and still, this white woman felt afraid. I'm thinking of Elijah McClain in Colorado. This is a real story that I'm thinking of. And he was just a young kid listening to music. He had, he had his iPod or whatever he was using, just dancing, having a good time. And next thing you know, he's tackled, a knee is on his neck, and then he's injected with some stuff, and he didn't make it. Young black boy, man, 21, 22 years old. Yeah. So these kinds of things are problems. But when you are able to figure out why, I'm talking to white men specifically, why are you afraid of black men? What have they done to you? I know this is a hard thing to think about, but maybe these are things that have happened because you've watched it on TV. There was a time when television and the movies was making it seem like that's, black men were the bad guys. But those are the only roles that they probably could get in those days because of the stereotypes in Hollywood. So this is a really big one. If you can dig deep, white women too, why are you afraid when you look out the window or you are by a black man or a black woman and you got to clutch your purse and move over to the side? President Obama even talked about that. He's experienced that before he was president of the United States. So what is this fear? What is the fear factor here? If anything, maybe black people should be afraid of white people because they keep killing us. Maybe that's the real fear factor.
Yeah, maybe. That's not a good thing either way.
But it's like, but the bias there. But do you see the bias that's there? Mm-hmm. And I know I'm talking black and white, but that's the way people can kind of really get it, is that most of the wealth here in the U.S. is held by whites. And then, but that's systemic. That's a reason for that. We could talk about U.S. history and culture some other show, but there's a reason for that. There are literally layers of laws enacted and even intentionality. I mean, it's a whole big thing. It's really intentional.
Sure.
But that's a big one. Why are you afraid of other people? Think about that. So when you're able to come to that conclusion and say, oh my God, it was me. Because some people be like, are you kidding me? I'm the most liberal person out there. I love everybody. I play We Are the World every day before I go to work, and it's like,
Well, Well, when it comes to audio, I think that a lot of the ways that this probably helps everyone if we hear ourselves in whatever media we're experiencing. So if you see someone who sounds and looks like you on a movie screen who isn't the bad guy,
There you go.
who can be the hero or heroine of the story, I mean, then that allows people outside of that perspective to experience that as a reality.
Hmm.
And people who relate to who is out there being played on the screen to be proud that they can do that too. I mean, like it's all, I think the media has a big part of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is
Absolutely.
why I think that podcasting is such a fantastic medium for a lot of this, because it's putting the voices of everybody out there with a very even playing field when it comes right down to it. So,
Hmm.
I really like that aspect of podcasting. But you're right that casting, I think they're getting a little better at this. They at least know there is an issue.
Mm. I sure
um,
hope so because it just makes it
yeah.
it's the pool is too small. There's too many great
Yes.
voices out there, And speaking of diversity and change and things like that in Hollywood, that's part of the reason why Black Panther was a smash success
Oh, yeah.
internationally.
Yeah.
Hearing all these different accents, different voices, the costuming, the sets, the people, the skin tones, darker skinned Black people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes even in casting, darker skinned people are not cast. Why
Hmm.
is that? There's a bias there too. Darker skinned Indians, darker skinned Hispanics, they are just simply not cast as much as those who have fairer skin. But the beauty of, I mean, I just love Black Panther. I think I've seen it maybe 15 or 16 times
It's a
so far.
fantastic film. Yeah, I
It's
agree.
just for
Yeah.
so on so many levels, and I just miss Chadwick Boseman so much. He and I
Yeah.
are both Howard University graduates, and I just, oh my God, I'm not gonna cry, but is he just his loss really was a great loss to me personally, and I know to the world. But he brought so much to the King T'Challa character. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
just incredible.
Yeah, it was
So
really
another
brilliant.
example of how diversity and thought and thinking and trying something different. Yeah, they could have had British accents. Most of those countries were colonized by the British or some European country. So yeah, they could have done Black Panther with a British accent or some European accent. But no, they chose to go with the authentic accent of the region of that continent. And boy, did that resonate with the world.
Yeah.
So there's I just love the fact that Disney, invested and took that leap. And of course, I think it's the Kegel brothers. I can mess up their last name, who are part of the Marvel comic universe, kings, if you will. And of
Yeah.
course, Stan Lee, God rest his soul in memory.
Mm.
But the fact that they were able to just take that leap and they're like, you know what, this is what we're gonna do, and they did it, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So those of you who are thinking about it, think about the success of Black Panther, and and if you don't know what to do as far as how to cast different voices, get a consultant, hire somebody who is from that experience. And this is something else I wanted to share with your audience too, is that if someone is trying to teach you, not you, Jody, but you, your listening audience, and you, I
Sure.
guess, about
Me too.
something, make sure they have experience in that area. Yeah, it's one thing to experience, how can I say, a bump on your toe, but it's another thing to have had toe surgery where you had to learn how to re-walk using your toe.
Mm.
And I think I'd rather hear from the person if I've got some toe issues and now I'm going to be a better toe from somebody who has had to relearn how to use the toe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so sometimes that happens when you're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, is that, again, sorry, here we go. You have white women and white men coming in teaching about diversity. And I'm like, but what have you had to overcome from your experience? You come with so much uh, privilege, entitlement, etc., that you don't even really know what it means to be inclusive. So don't get. I'm making hasty generalizations. I understand that, but there are times when people who have suffered through the system, who have been oppressed through the system, and when we make it, they call us resilient.
Mm.
When whites make it, they don't say resilient. They're just like, "Hey, attaboy, attagirl, good job." So for those of us who've had to be resilient and bounce back, if you got to bounce, that means you're going down before you can get back up to bounce up, right? So if we're on the uptick of that, that means that we probably have some great experience that we can bring and share that can really help transform an organization, how voices are heard, how the audio is branded, how people are recruited, and opportunities for folks, even in the decision-making roles, to be more inclusive and not just have people of European descent and white voices.
Are you looking for ways to improve your company's or podcast's impact? You'd be surprised how powerful the use of an intentional audio branding strategy can be. Want to know more? I have a free downloadable PDF that gives you my 5 tips for implementing an intentional audio strategy at voiceoversandvocals.com/audio-branding-strategy. That location does ask to put you on a mailing list, just to send you updates on when the new podcasts come out. But if you really don't want to give your email out, I understand. Just contact me directly. My email is all over my website, and I'll make sure you get that PDF without needing to sign up anywhere. If you do sign up, though, you also get access to a resources section called The Studio, where I have videos, white papers and PDFs, discounts from my guests, and snippets of audio from my guests that no one else gets to hear. So maybe it's worth your while. Totally up to you. And of course, if you're looking for voiceovers, you can get in touch with me about that too. Now, back to the podcast. So along those lines, how have you helped particular organizations? Do you have any successes that you could talk about?
I do.
Yeah.
Want to hear them?
I definitely want to hear them.
Okay. Well, there's this one organization that I trained, and I saw them recently at a conference. I did some in-person training a couple weeks ago. And it's so interesting in this virtual world, right? Because I had never seen her in person before. She and I met on, I think, LinkedIn or some social platform. Oh, no, she found me through my website because she had heard me at another conference online.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And so when I was in person and I was sharing with somebody, because I'm like, yeah, I'll be speaking today at 3:00, whatever. And she goes, LaTonya? I said, yeah. She goes, I'm so-and-so from, we brought you in to do training. I'm like, oh, yes, hello. To actually see her in person was like, wow, this is surreal. I love it. It's great. But she told me, she said, as a result of your training, we are being intentional. That's one of the things I talk about. Intentionality. You got to mean to do it. You just can't say, oh, we love the world and, our good thoughts are just going to change everything. No. She said, we intentionally hired a diversity director. And we are intentionally giving that director several staff, and we are intentionally funding them like we want them to win.
I love that. Good.
And so I was so thrilled with that because that's what I talk about. It's like some people want to say we're diverse. Oh, yeah, we hired a chief diversity officer, and that's all you hired was one person in an organization with 1,000 people.
Yeah, that's not going to help a whole lot.
So when my background is in technology. I'm a low temperature physicist. I'm a satellite engineer. I've done all these different things. I've worked at NASA, worked on spacecraft, really cool stuff. But I've seen with my own eyes, Jody, when we want to make a change in the tech or something that we want to advance, we pump the money in there like we want to do it. Mm-hmm. And those things that are well funded are those things that are expected to win. So if somebody is a chief diversity officer, okay, happy for you. That's a really big step. No, I'm not being sarcastic. That is a big step. But to win, they're going to need staff. They're going to need to report directly to the executive team, probably the chief executive officer, the most important voice, if you will, in a company, and get their backing as well as their support with multiple staff, not just an assistant, but multiple staff, long-term goals, funded in a long-term way, and then that could help make the change. So I think that's been the challenge. If you look at even LinkedIn, one day you see, we call them CDOs, Chief Diversity Officer, that has been gotten the job. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years later, 6 months later, you find out through some other means that they're no longer there. And I think that's because they weren't supported. They were just a box to check, and the company did not take it seriously. So even with the diverse voices that we're talking about in audio, yes, bring in new voices. Yes, do it, go for it. But if it doesn't work with the first diverse voice, the non-whites, I'm talking about non-whites now, that doesn't mean it's a failure. keep going, keep working on it. These are systemic problems that have been in place almost since the beginning of audio. And so it's going to take time to what I call undo the bias.
Yeah.
And again, if it's not working for you because you're not, you never had a broken toe, so you don't know how to fix the broken toe and walk again properly, find somebody, and of course these are just analogies, who has had a broken toe and has had to figure it out. Talk to people, some would say, who have been oppressed or suppressed or marginalized, and they have been able to come up and they have great information that they can share, and pay them too. That's something that happens too. There's a bias that comes to with Jody. Hey, we're doing this diversity training or whatever we're doing, and we're just going to ask the person to come for free. What? You want all that experience and things and knowledge that people have to help transform your organization, bring morale up high, increase productivity, and you want them to come for free?
Has someone actually asked you that?
Oh, honey.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
Free or just some money that I might be able to buy lunch and gas with.
I can't even. That blows my mind. My goodness.
Yep, it happens all the time because it's not valued. See, something that's undervalued is not taken seriously on so many levels. And so that, again, yes, pay the chief diversity officer or the staff that's coming in, and also pay your consultants like you're paying your other consultants and your other staff who are bringing in solutions that are helping to grow and transform the organization as well.
Yeah, super important. Thank you for mentioning that, because that's something people should know.
Yeah.
It's not free, and it shouldn't be free. My goodness. But along those lines, also, what are you working on right now? What are you heading up at the moment?
Well, I am writing a book on unconscious bias.
Wow, very cool.
Thank
Okay.
It's called Unconscious Bias Revealed:
Mm-hmm.
How to Recognize and Undo Bias.
It's a big question.
Mm-hmm. So be on the lookout for that. It'll be on Amazon and Google Books and Apple Books and BarnesandNoble.com. Barnes and Noble selling books online. So it's going to be there too. And I will have an audiobook too.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that.
So you're getting into voiceover now too, right?
I am. It's so exciting.
How's that going?
Well, I'm taking it, how can we say, step by step.
Okay.
So it's been about a year since I've re-entered, because back in the old days, I used to do voiceover work. And I was doing commercials, and I was working at a radio station. And I actually ended up being an on-air DJ, what is it called? Co-host of a show.
Yeah.
Co-host. So I became a co-host of the show and just loved radio, fell in love with it, and started doing all kinds of interviews with celebrities and executives and just really cool things. And so I just kind of fell into it, if you will, but I loved it. I've always wanted to do animation and voice characters and voice acting, and because my friends are like, oh my God, you do the best impressions. Oh, you are just really good. And so I'm like, oh, that would be cool, to do some animation and, like not just a recurring role, an ongoing role.
Sure.
As well as, corporate voiceover work. That would be super. So I started re-entering about a year ago. I wanted to make sure I came in the right way because I have been out of the business for so long. And so as a result of that, I've been going to lots of conferences and speaking of Sauvage, spending time learning from the Gaskins, but of course it's Joan and Rudy, and their team, and Val Kelly, and just so many who've been Everett Oliver, so many that I've been learning from, Scott Parkins. I mean, I'm name dropping now, but it really does make a difference, coming in back the right way. And as a result, I get to meet amazing people like Jody Kringle, who is nominated for a Sauvage Award. So. But if anybody's listening who wants to let's me out or whatever, let's talk.
I was going to ask you,
let's talk.
Where can they find you?
Voiceovers going.
Where can they find you for this kind of training also, but for voiceovers as well? Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, hey, I'll tell you what. Why don't they just reach out to me at the UB Trainer? So I'm known as the Unconscious Bias Trainer. So it's at the THE, the word spelled out, U for unconscious, B for bias trainer. So like when you go and work out with a personal trainer, how you feel the burn? Well, I think some of you might have been burning today as a result of some of the things I said. So it's at the UB Trainer on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest.
Fantastic. And you are, yeah, so the website is at theubtrainer.com, right?
Yes, it is. And
Okay.
thank you for mentioning that, Jody, because I blog on unconscious bias. And so every week, matter of fact, my latest blog post was yesterday. So go and check out the site if you want to see little video clips of me training. I also have a podcast too, the UB Trainer
Fantastic.
podcast. It's on
Mm-hmm.
Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the podcasts there on unconscious bias. So that's been pretty popular too. So it's exciting. It's exciting to help bring solutions that people need, and they may not realize they need them until they
Sure.
start hearing
Yeah.
conversations like this.
Yeah.
Because again, most people think, we're great, we're nice, we're not hurting anybody, but they don't realize that their bias is keeping them from opening certain doors to help other organizations and individuals grow. But
Mm-hmm.
yet and still, they really some people are never really even challenged to even have to think differently. So hopefully today is that wake up call for folks to start thinking, hey, what can I do differently? How can I be a better me? And how can I get courageous to try to undo bias?
Yeah. Yeah. This is it's an important conversation.
Hi, this is Cynthia Joy, voice coach. I was a guest on Jody's podcast, Audio Branding. It was a great pleasure working with Jody. She's a great host, thoughtful, detail-oriented, and asks insightful questions. I recommend you check out the podcast if you want to make your brand sound successful.
Before we go, I want to ask you, like, what have you experienced yourself in this? Like, is this because I want to make this a little personal because, I
It's
know
not
you.
personal yet. I haven't been
Well,
sharing personal.
well, you've been sharing the broader spectrum, which I understand, and I
Okay,
get that.
okay.
I totally get that. But your personal experience as far as this goes, which is how you're relating to people changing their bias, that's an important part of this. So I want to get your perspective on that.
Well, being an African American woman living in America, there you
Mm-hmm.
go. Living in Texas, a southern state, it's still very racist.
Mm.
I live in a city that's known to be, how can we say, liberal and progressive and a blue dot in a red state? Well, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Ask the people with the broken toes, how they've become resilient and had to bounce back from that. Being a scientist and engineer, African American woman working with predominantly men who are white, that is the challenge. So it's just so many, unfortunately, different things that I personally have experienced, or even just family members or friends, people who've been overqualified for opportunities but don't get them. And you're like, but the description says this is what you want,
Yeah.
XYZ 1, 2, 3, but you're going with
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's not even in the ballpark of being able to do those capabilities. So there's been countless times that I have not had opportunity to provide goods, to provide services, even as a business owner, for clients because of whatever reason.
Mm.
Maybe I didn't go to the school they thought I should go to. Maybe I'm not from the state they thought I should be in. But a lot of that happens in Texas. They're I don't know if you've heard this term, good old boy network.
I have heard the term, yes.
I think it
Yeah.
was originated here.
Oh, okay.
Because for whatever reason in this state, it's like you've got to check certain boxes. It doesn't mean you have to know anything about the subject, but they are very loyal, some would say to a fault, of making sure that they're just getting certain people that they want in their circle. And I
Sure.
understand that happens, throughout the world. There's certain levels of, this is our group, this is our stick. I get that. But here it's just beyond anything I've ever seen.
Wow.
Because the work's not getting done. In some instances, you're like, but wait a minute. This is the job description. This is what the statement of work is. Who's going to get it done?
Mm-hmm.
And so you find a lot of gaps, unfortunately, that happen because of that bias. And, personally speaking, I have been on the receiving end of that more times than I can count. Able to bring excellent service, able to bring, the solutions that are needed. I've traveled to 5 of the 7 continents, so my worldview is expansive. I've worked on literally machinery that's out of this world. Spacecraft.
That is very cool, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Is it far out too?
Oh, yeah.
Far out. Groovy. Can you dig it?
I am such a geek. So, yes.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah, that the whole space thing is like, I'm like, yeah. Starstruck. There you go. It's awesome. But yeah, I so appreciate your relating that personally, because I think that people need to understand how this relates and how it presents itself to people as opposed to organizations. Like they need to be able to narrow it down to that personal experience,
And some would say, like, you got to be kidding me, LaTonya, with that background, you should be able to do whatever you want. Yeah, I should, but biases are not allowing that.
Yeah.
And in some instances, Jody, people are afraid that I am going to expose the fact that they don't know what they say they know. That's what I've heard.
Really?
They're like, oh, LaTonya, there's no way we're bringing you in. Not in my face, but later.
Yeah.
When it's safe and they know they can't be sued or however that goes.
Well, then why did they hire the other person in the first place is what I'd like to know.
Well, they didn't feel threatened by that person. That's the rest of it. And they're like, we knew that you were going to like just outshine us all and we were going to look bad. And so I'm thinking, but I don't want your job. I don't want your job. I just wanted to come in and do the work and then leave. As a business owner, I wanted to provide a service, hopefully improve and make things better, but I don't want your job. I don't want what you're doing, but I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me living here where people feel threatened. Now, in other parts of the United States, they embrace what I bring to the table. They're like, oh, yeah, come on. Because they're okay with, and not saying I'm the smartest person in the room. Please, that's not what I'm saying. But they're okay with having someone of an intellectual level that's going to maybe bring, some different opportunities to the table, different ways of thinking. I call it non-traditional solutions for clients. Some people love that. They want that.
Yeah.
And others are they're not ready. So
different perspectives are very important. Yeah.
Yeah, and their how can we say their self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so self-esteem, their level of feeling valued or important, or there's a bias, maybe something happened to them. They're like, oh my God, she studied physics. I had a bad experience with physics in high school, so I hated my physics teacher. She's a physicist. Oh my God, low temperature physicist on top of that. What in the world is that? So I'm just going to shut her out because my bias is so strong that even though I'm, the big boss and I'm making $1 bazillion, whatever, but I'm going to turn her and her company away, Boaz Enterprises, because of my bias. And it's not said like that, but sometimes that's the way that things happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am very pleased to have been able to talk to you about this because I think it's a really important topic. In audio and in general. And I really appreciate your coming and chatting with me about this. Thank you so much.
Of course. And thank you too, Jody. It's been a joy. And everybody, doesn't she have a great voice? She's got that, wow, I can just listen to her for hours kind of voice. So you have beautiful voice registry. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And likewise, I have every expectation that you will do every wonderful thing in voiceover that you want to do.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate referrals. So if you all can't find me, send it to Jody and she'll send it to me. But thank you for that. I appreciate that. I really do.
Thanks so much. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.